your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. Today is 211 Day, and the United Way in Lethbridge is raising awareness about the mental health service. As BCN's Alex McLeod explains, with the increase in calls, it is now needed more than ever.
February 11th is 211 Day. 211 is a 24-hour, 7 days a week service that helps connect people with local resources. Jackie Zalzak, Executive Director of United Way Lethbridge, says the confidential service can connect you to hundreds of helpful programs.
So if you're looking for information about housing supports that are out there, daycares that may be out there, or subsidy information. If you are just looking for information about healthcare information that may be out there and you're not sure where to go. If you're looking for information, if you've been evicted from your home, information about what kind of supports may be out there for that. Mental health supports, all different kinds of things that are non-emergency type of supports.
Officials say housing and mental health related calls have been increasing year over year across Canada. More than 43,000 calls related to housing were made between January and June 2023. That's an increase of 22% from the previous 6-month period. Around 8,000 of those calls were made in Alberta. Mental health calls are also on the rise, with 44,000 needs identified for those in Canada. As for Alberta, 11,000 of those calls were made, with 155 of those coming from Lethbridge. For Bridge City News, I'm Alex McLeod.
A collaboration between the Blood Tribe Department of Health and the University of Lethbridge was celebrated on Tuesday morning with a naming ceremony.
It's Taylor Swift.
The first stage of a collaborative, multi-phased approach to enhance health and well-being on the Kainai Nation is underway. And on Tuesday in standoff, the project was given a name.
The name of the partnership is Sukinakiapi. Sukinaki means health and healing. Api means kind of a general introduction of all health-related programs and services. So when you combine the two, Sukinakiapi, it's about health, not just health and healing, but programming and partnership and best practice models.
The project is a collaboration between the Blood Tribe Department of Health and the University of Lethbridge. In September 2022, the two parties signed a memorandum of understanding to honor the health-related calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, partnering to expand health services capacity and delivery on the Blood Reserve. That work has now begun in Phase 1 with a community needs assessment. CEO of the Blood Tribe Department of Health, Derek Fox, says this partnership will open up countless opportunities.
It starts to level the playing field for our youth as far as opportunities with school and, training needs, huge career opportunities here in health. And we know shortages as far as workforces are across all sectors. For us here, being a smaller community, that's something so strong for us.
Further partnerships will develop as the project moves through its various phases. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day. Well, Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and that means it's the season of love, and you may be looking for someone special to spend it with this year. The Better Business Bureau of Southern Alberta, however, has issued a warning about romance scams. These fraudsters often enter a trusting relationship with an unsuspecting person for the benefit of money. A spokesperson for the BBB says the scammers know how to pull on your heartstrings.
Scammers are very good at showering you with love, with a lot of affection, just to establish a trust or earn your trust. And what that really means is that they want to plant that seed for you to trust in them. So once that trust is being established, then they can continue to perpetrate the scam, which is usually a request for money or an offer to accept money.
Officials say to watch out for red flags like professing their love before meeting in person, always have an excuse why they can't see you in person, or guilting you into sending money.
You can end up being in a crime ring. part of a crime ring, as they would trap you into this situation where they're using you as a money mule. That's a term that's used.
If you believe you've been the victim of a scam, you're encouraged to end contact immediately and reach out to your local police department. Coming up, half of the men charged in connection with the Coutts border protests have been released from custody. More about that after the break. Welcome back. The Coutts 4 have now become the Coutts 2. Half the men charged in connection with the Coutts border protests have been released from custody after serving nearly 2 years behind bars. On Tuesday, Chris Lysak pleaded guilty to a restricted weapons charge, and Jerry Morin pleaded guilty to conspiracy to traffic a firearm. But with time already served, they were both released. The charges of conspiring to commit murder against RCMP officers have been stayed. Chris Carberts and Anthony Oleanic remain locked up. Fort Macleod councillor Marco Van Hugenbos, who himself faces charges of mischief in connection with the Coutts border blockade, says it was a relief for 2 of the 4 finally being released. Hugenbos says what is taking place is a travesty of justice.
We have the 11th hour, and we don't know what kind of pressure the Crown has come under, whether their authorities or their superiors said, hey, what's going on here? There's public outcry. There seems to be interference. There seems to be something going on. You got to deliver. And they delivered. They delivered on 2 relatively smaller charges, significantly smaller charges. And the sentencing resulted in quid pro quo, which is time served. And they are, I believe, both released as we speak.
Greg Dunn, who is the lawyer for Jerry Morin, released a statement which read in part, "It is unfortunate that Mr. Morin has spent 2 years of his life in custody awaiting this day. That being said, now that this day is upon him, he looks forward to seeing his family and moving on with his life." A recall petition has been launched by a Calgary businessman who is not happy with the job Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek is doing. Gondek received backlash for opting out of the city's menorah lighting at City Hall. She also approved a 7.8% residential property tax increase. But apparently the straw that broke the camel's back for Johnson was the city's single-use items bylaw, which was repealed last month. Landon Johnston, the man behind the petition, joined Hal Roberts earlier this week from Calgary to talk about it.
Landon, many feel that Jyoti Gondek is a one-and-done mayor for the city of Calgary. I'm guessing you may feel the same way. What is it about her leadership and the current council that has you so upset?
It's been, 2 years of this so far, and it's just been immediately she got in, she introduced a climate emergency for Calgary. That alone was, I guess I just didn't see the reasoning behind it, or it didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time. But I know a lot of people were confused about it. And then it was the issue with the canceling the arena deal, like that was on the taxpayers again to pay for the cancellation of that. And then she comes out with a new one that costs more money. It's just like the infighting within council, the inability to get a lot of votes passed that are beneficial to the city. And then it was a single-use bylaw that came through, and just the amount of money that was spent on introducing a bill, and then the money spent taking it away, and now they're looking at putting it back in, it just under a different name.
Now you have to get 500,000 signatures in person, and you only have 2 months to do it. That's a pretty daunting task. Do you have a good-sized team out there helping you?
On Monday, it was just me. On Monday, I was literally just going to go in front of City Hall with a chair, a heater, and a blanket and just sign people there. And I was just going to be there every weekend by myself. That was the initial plan. I was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, you know what? This is a recourse that I can use as a single one person in this city, and I'm going to do it because this was given to us as a legislation and a recourse to voice our opinion. And it turned out that I wasn't the only one. I'm getting emails and calls from organizations that were prepared to do this. I just beat them to the punch. So these organizations, left wing, right wing, whoever they are, have come together to support. And again, they had the infrastructure in place, professional door knockers. They have places where people can go. They've got administration staff. Like it's turned into this huge thing where now I'm like, holy moly, like we might actually be able to. Yeah, I mean, I'll shoot for the stars.
So even if you don't collect the 500,000 signatures needed, do you feel that your message will get across to Mayor Gondek and Council and your voice is being heard?
I was hoping it would be. I was really hoping that would have woken the city up, but the comments coming from council and from the mayor makes me seem like they're not hearing us. So I think the voice is just going to get louder and louder and louder to the point where, you know, they're going to have to hear us.
Stay with us. We have a lot more news from around the province coming up after the break. Welcome back. A class action lawsuit is being launched against the Alberta government on behalf of business owners in the province. Those who faced operational restrictions due to public health orders during the COVID-19 pandemic. This lawsuit follows the recent Ingram decision by the courts, which declared that all of Dr. Dina Hinshaw's public health orders were deemed illegal. Jeffrey Rath is the lead counsel in this case. He spoke with Hal Roberts on Thursday from Foothills, Alberta.
Now, you say this lawsuit follows the recent Ingram decision by the courts, which declared that all of Dr. Dina Hinshaw's public health orders were deemed illegal?
We started acting for Rebecca Ingram in the fall of 2020 when Dina Hinshaw started promulgating all of these ridiculous public health orders that had the effect of enacting one of the biggest expropriations and seizures of private property in the history of Alberta, specifically telling business owners that at a whim by Dina Hinshaw, they were going to be shut down and that they were going to have to use all of their family savings, borrow money from banks, do whatever they could to keep their businesses from going bankrupt because Dina Hinshaw had declared that healthy people could no longer go to their establishments could no longer patronize their establishments unless they gave in to, the ridiculous vaccine requirements that were imposed on people in the province.
Now, the court has to actually grant permission for this action to proceed as a class action. Why don't you explain how that works?
It's called the certification hearing. So as of now, Alberta government lawyers are fighting certification. We don't know whether Premier Smith even understands that that's what's going on and whether this is just a knee-jerk reaction from from Alberta government lawyers that, oh, okay, we've been served with a lawsuit, fight. But I think there's a question of some nicety as to whether or not Danielle Smith wants to look all of the people that elected her in the eye and tell them that she does not stand for property rights in this province. And she thinks that people that lost their property and had their businesses destroyed by illegal COVID orders should suck it up and not look to the Alberta government for any relief with regard to actions taken by the Alberta government that were clearly illegal prior to Danielle Smith being elected premier.
Lawyer Jeffrey Rath, thanks so much for joining us today from Foothills, Alberta.
Even though winter is upon us, emergency officials have still been battling 57 active wildfires in the province. According to Alberta Wildfire, most are in the northern region, and fortunately, none are out of control. There are 9 burning in the Fort McMurray Forest area, 8 in the Slave Lake and High Level regions, and 7 in the Grand Prairie District. Officials say there are still fire advisories in place in southern Alberta, including Pincher Creek, Fort Macleod, and Tabor. The province says a new drought advisory committee has been launched in Alberta. They say El Nino is producing a warm and dry winter across much of the prairies, and more than 70% is experiencing drought conditions. They say Alberta is of severe drought risk this year. The 6-person advisory committee will include leaders in agriculture, Indigenous and irrigation, and those who specialize in rural issues. It will act as an independent sounding board to help the government support farmers and ranchers. It will give advice directly to Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz. Officials say the members will also help identify long-term solutions to help benefit future generations. And Alberta's premier was in Ottawa this past week to open a new provincial office. Danielle Smith says the new space is meant to expand the province's presence in our nation's capital and to help amplify our province's voice on the national stage. Alberta and Ottawa often butt heads over issues such as energy, pensions, and the environment. Alberta previously had an office in Ottawa, but it was shut down in 2015 amid a budget shortfall under Premier Jim Prentice. And a couple of NDP MLAs have officially put their name forward to become the new leader of Alberta's New Democrats. Three-term Calgary MLA Kathleen Ganley, who is the former Justice Minister, says her campaign would focus on delivering a message tied to the NDP's economic strategy.
I think that regardless of a university education, average families here in Alberta should have access to the basics. They should have food, shelter, education. They should have things like hockey or soccer practice. They should have access to the occasional vacation. But for many, that dream is getting farther and farther away. I know who I am. I know why I'm here, and I know that my colleagues stand with me. So the UCP can call me whatever they want. I won't be fooled, and neither will Albertans.
Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips has thrown her support behind Ganley as the party's new leader. And in addition, Edmonton Whitemud MLA Raki Pancholi has entered the race to replace Rachel Notley as leader of the Alberta NDP. Notley announced last month that she would step down as soon as members chose her replacement. Any candidates who wish to run must register before March 15th. The new leader will be chosen on June 22nd. Coming up, Premier Smith's new policies for transgender youth have been creating quite the stir in the province. We hear from both sides of the issue next. Welcome back. Protests were held across the province this past week in response to the Alberta government's new youth transgender policies, including one on a rainy Saturday in Lethbridge. BCN's Alex McLeod was there and filed this report.
Act up! Fight back! Trans lives are under attack!
Protesters across Alberta took to the streets on Saturday. Many came out to raise their voices over the new youth health policies in schools. They cover a range of topics from gender identity, surgeries, and transgender athletes. Shannon Phillips, NDP MLA for Lethbridge West, acknowledges some parents may be concerned about what is being taught, but she says that's not the case here.
Parents always want to know what's going on in the schools. That's why we have the education system structured the way we do. That's why we have processes in place for that, so that schools can be safe and inclusive and parents can have their very legitimate questions answered. What we've seen more recently is campaigns of disinformation, of making problems up that don't really exist. Instead of actually funding classrooms and funding our education system, the UCP has decided to distract from their government's record with some of these policies that are very, very harmful to trans youth.
Even on a wet and rainy Saturday, people are still filling the streets in front of Lethbridge City Hall to protest the Alberta government's new policy for schools. The event saw trans youth, parents, school teachers, and even a priest come up and share their thoughts and feelings to the crowd. A petition was also being signed to present to the Alberta legislature. LES, a volunteer at the event, says she wants the government to focus its attention on other issues.
I'm hoping that it will kind of bring light to the Conservative Party. I'm just hoping that they'll rethink what they're doing and see that children will die, and that's kind of a straight fact that we're putting children's lives at risk, and that's not okay, and we're just going to keep fighting. We'd like them to just drop it, really. They shouldn't continue to bring out bills. Focus on our drought crisis, focus on our housing crisis, focus on other things, don't attack children.
Protests also took place in Calgary and Edmonton as well on Saturday. Organizers of the Lethbridge rally say a school walkout is being planned for this Wednesday at 10 a.m. in support of trans youth. For Bridge City News, I'm Alex McLeod.
And as you heard in that story, teens across Alberta staged a school walkout Wednesday morning to protest Premier Daniel Smith's proposed policies. Last week, Smith announced a number of policy changes related to gender-diverse youth and sexual education. This includes the requirement for parental notification and consent if a child aged 15 or younger changes their name or pronouns at school. Puberty blockers and hormone therapies for gender affirmation will not be permitted for children aged 15 and under, but youth aged 16 or 17 will be permitted to start gender affirmation therapy as long as they are deemed mature enough and have parental, physician, and psychologist approval. The province-wide school walkout was planned by a 16-year-old grade 10 student in Leduc, Alberta. Aspen Servo says his 13-year-old brother is transgender, and the walkout was meant to show him and others that they're supported. Here in Lethbridge, students from Chinook High School and Winston Churchill High School also took part, as well as Lethbridge Collegiate Institute, where I spoke with the organizer of the walkout from that school. What are some of the key issues here with what the province recently announced?
Mainly with the key issues being not allowing students under 16 to change their names and pronouns without parental consent, and if they are over 16 and over, they unfortunately have to get notified. The changes have to get notified to a parent.
Meanwhile, Premier Danielle Smith has been defending her new proposed transgender youth policies. During a recent visit to Ottawa, federal Liberals, including Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault, accused her of pushing an anti-LGBTQ agenda.
I've had many conversations with members of the trans community, and it's not a single voice, and it's not a single perspective. I think there's another woman that I consulted with who transitioned as an adult. And when I was talking it through with her about whether she would have liked to have transitioned earlier, she said, well, then I wouldn't have my kids, and I love my kids. So these are the kind of things that that weigh on my mind, is I want to make sure that young people are not closing off options to themselves prematurely. I want to make sure that processes are followed so that it's a well-considered decision and that the child is mature enough to understand the consequences of the decisions that they're making. And so I will keep on consulting with the transgender community, because it's really important that we give those who do make the transition the support they need in their family environment and with their medical needs on a lifetime basis.
And on the flip side, we hear from the leader of a parent group who's happy with Premier Smith's youth policy changes. That's after the break. Welcome back. Some parents are celebrating the recent announcement from the province regarding gender identity and hormone blockers for minors. Chell Landry is a parent and part of Freedom Hub Lethbridge. She joined Hal Roberts earlier this week to discuss why she thinks it's important for parents to be in the know about their own kids' lives.
Freedom Hub is just a community group that I started in 2021. And so it's kind of a spot where people can come together, build community, and support each other in our rights. And it's really important to just know people in your community, right? So I kind of wanted to build that.
Now, Premier Danielle Smith was talking a bit about gender reassignment surgery and the fact that it'll be banned in Alberta for those 17 and under. Smith says since this is a life-altering decision with permanent consequences, that it's best left for adults to decide, not children, not minors. Critics are calling this a very cruel decision. What are your thoughts?
I think the critics are a little confused as to what it means to protect children. I absolutely love what Danielle has put forward, and I think that it is definitely time to see our politicians step up and help protect the children and parental rights and the children's rights, because this is about our parental rights to protect the children, right? So as a minor, they're not able to make certain decisions for themselves. They may think that they know what they want, but children change their mind as they grow and develop. And it is very important that we make sure that we're not putting them in harm's way just to appease public opinion, because that's how people get hurt. There's so many children who have had reassignment surgery or taken hormones and live to regret it. So it can be very dangerous to do this to children, and in encouraging gender transition in minors is very dangerous. So I absolutely love that our premier has stepped up to the plate and put forth action to protect children and parental rights.
There appears to be a lot of media attention focused on the LGBTQ2+ community, their supporters, who call the Premier's decision deplorable, many within that community. There's also reaction outside of our borders here in Alberta and even outside of Canada. What feedback are you observing outside of the mainstream media?
I'm observing that in our community, people are happy with these policies. There is a lot of backlash, yes. A lot of the things we see online may include more of that backlash just because of censorship and the people who have the opinion or the parents and the community members who support this are being censored. And so their voices aren't being heard and they're looking like the minority, when in actuality, it is those who are pro gender transition for minors that are the minority. And we cannot pander to the minority just to appease them when it's putting our children at risk.
Now, puberty blockers and hormone therapies would also not be allowed except for those who've already begun the process, Shell. Again, those opposed say this discriminates against the trans community, particularly the puberty blockers, which are very time sensitive. What are your thoughts on these kind of treatments?
Oh, well, my thoughts are that it's so dangerous to give children any kind of drugs or treatment that could cause long-term damage. And we've seen that, there's evidence of that. So it's very, very important that we keep a stand on this and educate those who are opposed, because they probably don't understand the implications of these hormone therapies. These drugs that they give to children are the same drugs that they would give to a pedophile to medically castrate them. It would make children infertile for the rest of their lives. So if they grow up and decide, well, I actually want kids, they won't be able to. And that's not a decision about having kids to make when you're a kid, because kids don't even have that on their purview. They aren't thinking about, I want to be a mom or a dad. And some kids do think about that, but it's not really until you're past that puberty stage, closer to maybe 18, 19, 20, or even 25, or some people wait till 30 before they're like, yeah, actually, I want to have kids. So it's important we don't take that option away.
Coming up next, where can teens to go to find a safe place, some advice, and acceptance and encouragement these days? Well, there's a youth center in Lethbridge that offers all that and more. We'll be right back.